Once you live in an area for a while, you start to get used to your surroundings and can detect things that are out of the ordinary. In this case, we go to Oklahoma City on a hot and humid day in May 2013. The sun is out and partly cloudy skies persist, which would normally mean that today was going to be a nice day to be outside. However, something is off. The day is just too perfect. It is also hot and muggy outside, which normally is an annoyance for those who like to be outside, but with the apparent nice weather, it is more of a warning sign. Even if you lived without a TV or access to the internet around the area of Moore, Oklahoma, you would know that something terrible was about to happen. And then, at 2:30 in the afternoon, the weather turned from a nice, hot, and humid day into a dark, gray nightmare as tornado sirens started to go off. And Moore, Oklahoma is now minutes away from history repeating itself.
And then it's going to go, if it doesn't lift, it's going to go into Moore. And right now it is red line, center line for Moore. You folks in Moore, in fact, it's exactly on the track of the May 3rd tornadoes where it is right now. Get down now. If you're I-35, get out of your car. If you're east of I-35 over to Tinker Air Force Base, please, we plead with you, go to your safe spot now. Take your radio, forget the live pictures, go get safe. Oh my gosh.
89, South 89.
Folks, we plead with you, just go to your safe spot if you possibly can. That's an F. Look at the horizontal vortex. That is an F4 to an F5 tornado. That's winds of 250 miles an hour.
On May 3rd, 1999, an F5 tornado rampaged through Moore, Oklahoma and the surrounding area, resulting in complete annihilation for those caught in its path. The tornado, which had wind speeds measuring 318 miles per hour, would result in 36 deaths and over 500 injuries from Bridge Creek all the way to Oklahoma City as the tornado tore through homes, businesses, and in many cases, scoured the pavement and the ground around it. The aftermath of such an apocalyptic nightmare would result in the Oklahoma City region investing $12 million into a storm shelter system that would allow residents to go underground if another tornado were to strike, as many homes in 1999 did not have basements or storm shelters. Those shelters would be completed one by one in the following 14 years, and by 2013, there were more than 11,000 shelters constructed in the region. This is an impressive feat to organize and invest in, as the potential to save lives was now fully realized. However, on May 20th, 2013, these storm shelters would be put to the test, as Moore was about to get hit by another apocalyptic tornado.
A tornado emergency now in effect for Moore. Tornado emergency for Moore. You folks in Moore, you need to grab whatever it is you need to grab and you need to go underground. Big debris ball there. That whole thing is the tornado. The debris ball is over a mile wide. The debris ball is over a mile wide. It is heading right into West Moore right now. Wedge-shaped violent tornado, could easily be an F4 below ground or storm cellar or safe room. That's it, or out of the way. A wide debris ball. This is exactly the May 3rd track. Mile-wide debris ball. It is a mile-wide tornado, wedge violent F4 plus tornado.
The last EF5 tornado. The Moore tornado was a violent wedge tornado that barreled through much of McLean and Cleveland counties south of Oklahoma City. The tornado would test the strength of not only the shelters built, but also the spirit of the people of Moore, as catastrophic damage and hundreds of casualties resulted from this once-in-a-lifetime event. In this documentary, we will be detailing the entirety of the event, from discussing the meteorology behind it, to the tornado itself, and the miraculous recovery and aftermath of such a nightmare. strap yourselves in, because this is going to be a wild ride. The days leading up to May 20th allowed for many tornado ingredients to come together and create the perfect storm for that day's events. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico began to enter the Oklahoma area and allowed for the foundation of a highly unstable environment, as warm, dry air from Mexico was also converging into the region. This dry air allowed for the formation of a dry line on May 17th. This dry line would concentrate the moist area over northern Texas and much of Oklahoma, as cooler air began to intrude from Canada, and would result in the formation of a low pressure system on May 18th in the northern Great Plains. This low pressure system gradually strengthened over the next couple of days, trapping the Gulf moisture and allowed for a much more unstable environment. This instability would translate into convective available potential energy, which is essentially fuel for severe thunderstorms to initiate and grow. The CAPE values across the OKC region were well over 4,500 joules per kilogram, which is a very concerning number, as that is the amount of energy stored for thunderstorms to use to produce dangerous conditions. On May 20th, there was also a significant amount of capping in the OKC sounding, which is when a stable air mass forms beneath the large amount of instability present. This kind of scenario is known as a loaded gun scenario, and in this case, it would create a question for many forecasters across the country. Will this go off and produce crazy storms, or will the cap hold off and result in a weaker storm scenario? If you looked at the 12Z sounding from May 20th, which was around 7 a.m. local time, you could easily tell that there was a massive cap present that was holding off all the unstable air aloft, and had that held, this would not have been an event. But that was taken at 7 a.m. local time, and with the daytime heating about to be in full swing, the cap would erode more and more as temperatures reached the lower to mid 80s across the OKC region. By 12 p.m., the cap was nearly gone, and with a massive amount of instability just waiting for convection to fire up and tap into some of the greatest conditions Mother Nature had to offer. One other thing that allowed for such a possibility of destructive thunderstorms was the large amount of wind shear present. Up to 50 knots of bulk shear was present in the OKC region and would allow for storms to quickly organize and develop. This amount of wind shear would allow a thunderstorm to go from 0 to 100 at a very alarming rate and could threaten many people's lives within a matter of minutes. The Storm Prediction Center also saw these conditions developing and would issue a moderate risk of severe weather in areas across Oklahoma City. However, the main risk was for destructive hailstones larger than 2 inches in diameter, as the tornado threat was still somewhat uncertain for the region. Even though there were plenty of ingredients to produce tornadic storms, the lower wind shear profiles closer to the surface made it uncertain as to how the threat would pan out. Even so, the threat was great enough to issue a tornado watch at 1:10 p.m. Central Daylight Time for much of central Oklahoma as the cap continued to erode and severe thunderstorms were looking increasingly likely. Less than an hour later, around 2 p.m., a line of thunderstorms began to develop west of the Oklahoma City metro area, with one isolated cell firing across northern Grady County. The supercell rapidly intensified in a matter of minutes, resulting in the NWS in Norman issuing a severe thunderstorm warning for northern Grady, northwestern Cleveland, northern McLean, and southwestern Oklahoma counties at 2:12 p.m. The thunderstorm would quickly gain supercell characteristics, with, quote, the rotation at the mid-levels of the storm's cloud structure becoming apparent even before it was officially classified as severe, according to the NWS. This was primarily due to more than enough wind shear present over central Oklahoma, more at the lower levels than initially anticipated, and would result in a rapid escalation of events. Normal programming was suspended in 3 of Oklahoma City's 5 television news outlets, KFOR-TV, KOCO-TV, and KWTV, and began emergency weather coverage immediately after the tornado watch went into effect. And with this severe thunderstorm warning now issued, the meteorologists working for those stations were on high alert. KOKH-TV and KTUZ-TV began their coverage as severe thunderstorm warnings went into effect. As a byproduct of this coverage, as well as the forecasters anticipating these storms to arrive right when school released, many worried parents would arrive at schools across Moore and OKC to pick up their children early so they could get to their shelters in case the worst happened. At 2:40 p.m., rotation began to increase around the cloud base of the supercell, and a wall cloud began to develop. This led to a tornado warning being issued for far northeastern Grady, western Cleveland, northern McLean, and southern Oklahoma counties, as the storm continued to approach the OKC region. With this rapidly developing situation, a helicopter from KFOR was dispatched to the Newcastle area to get a live look at the supercell to determine if a tornado was about to touch down. By 2:55 p.m., the helicopter was in position and was giving a live view of what was about to come near the Newcastle Casino.
I'm directly over the Newcastle High School, and I'm shooting pretty much at this time straight north. There's a water tower just north of me, and I obviously can't make it out to see exactly what street that is, but that's where your tornado is right there. Look at it, Mike, on the ground, coming down. There's you a lot better shot, and man, this dude, we're getting pretty close to it.
The tornado touched down 1 minute later and rapidly began to intensify as it generally moved towards the east-northeast as it approached Moore. Initially a stovepipe tornado with EF1 strength, the tornado would explode into an EF4 monster within 2 minutes, becoming a wedge tornado in the process. A large debris ball grew around the funnel, and ground scouring began in the area, with several homes in a subdivision along its path sustaining EF3 damage. At 3:01 p.m., the National Weather Service issued a tornado emergency for southern Oklahoma City and Moore, as various storm spotters confirmed that a large, violent tornado was approaching the area. Radar found that the tornado was over a mile wide within the Hook Echo as the tornado crossed into portions of South Oklahoma City and northern Cleveland County. The tornado maintained EF3 to EF4 intensity as a decommissioned bridge on US Route 62 was severely damaged, with part of its mount ripped off and tossed across Interstate 44 as the tornado approached. It then continued moving east towards Moore, roughly following southwest 149th Street as it entered the OKC Metro. At that point, it began to grow rapidly in width, and a second brief area of EF4 damage was noted near South May Avenue, with several homes leveled and one was completely swept clean of its foundation, though the home was nailed and not bolted, giving it the EF4 rating. As the tornado entered the southern Oklahoma City metro, a traffic jam occurred for several miles along Santa Fe Avenue as residents attempted to either escape or pick up their children at schools located near or in the tornado's path. As KWTV's news helicopter was capturing live video of the tornado, Chief Meteorologist Gary England, upon seeing footage of the backup that was being relayed by the helicopter pilot Jim Gardner, urged drivers caught in the jam to use nearby streets to detour out of the tornado's expected track, as many were likely listening to the broadcast on the radio in their vehicles. The tornado briefly weakened to EF3 intensity before strengthening back to EF4 intensity near Foreman Drive, flattening several homes as it now mainly affected rural areas south of Southwest 149th Street. The tornado would strike an oil production site with 4 oil tanks blown away, one of which was never found, while the rest were thrown up to a mile away. The tornado then entered Celestial Acres, where every single home was either leveled or swept away at EF4 intensity, and the ground on the properties was scoured to bare soil, and vehicles were thrown and stripped down to their frames. Surveyors would later note that based on the damage to the cars and the ground scouring, the tornado was likely at EF5 intensity in this area. though the construction quality of the homes only permitted an EF4 rating as the foundations were not properly anchored. A 10-ton propane tank was quickly picked up and thrown more than half a mile through the air by the tornado, while a strip mall was completely leveled in the area. The tornado continued east, heavily scouring a field before slamming into Briarwood Elementary School, which was annihilated. The NWS originally rated this damage EF5 due to the structural damage done to the school, but further evaluation and a 2014 study published by the American Meteorological Society revealed evidence of poor construction at the school, and the rating was subsequently downgraded to EF4. EF5 or not, this was now a very violent and destructive tornado that had just decimated a school, but in a rare instance of mercy on that day, no fatalities occurred at the school. Past Briarwood Elementary, the tornado intensified even further as it entered densely populated areas just west of Moore, including the Westmore subdivision, where many that lived there suffered apocalyptic damage. Well-built, anchor-bolted homes were completely flattened, and 2 were completely slabbed, with the damage rated EF5. The tornado continued generally northeast at EF4 to EF5 strength, completely debarking trees and annihilating entire neighborhoods as it moved into the western city limits of Moore. Many homes were flattened in neighborhoods to the east of South Santa Fe Avenue, with 1 anchor-bolted home completely slabbed in this area, initially rated EF5, but was later downgraded to EF4 due to a closer inspection of the foundation. This inspection revealed that the anchor bolts were missing their nuts and washers as they were not properly bolted, weakening the overall structure and making it easier for the tornado to destroy the home. The tornado then annihilated Plaza Towers Elementary School at EF4 intensity, where 7 children were tragically killed when a cinder block wall collapsed on top of them. More than a dozen homes in a subdivision near Plaza Towers Elementary were swept cleanly away, though the inspections revealed that they had been nailed rather than anchor bolted to their foundations, and the damage to this subdivision was rated EF4. Even so, this tornado was still extremely violent as lawns were completely scoured down to bare soil. The tornado continued through western Moore with entire blocks of homes flattened, trees completely debarked and defoliated, numerous vehicles thrown and mangled, and ground severely scoured in other residential areas nearby, with the damage also rated EF4. Most of the fatalities from the tornado occurred in the Plaza Towers area of Moore, with a woman in one of these houses killed as she tried to seek shelter in a closet. Further to the northeast, at least a dozen cars were piled up against the front entrance of Moore Medical Center, which also sustained EF4 damage, and infamously, 1 car was lofted and thrown onto the roof. Many homes in the neighborhood near the medical center were swept away, including a row of 4 well-built brick homes with anchor bolts properly attached. The damage to those 4 homes were rated EF5. An open field directly behind this row of homes was deeply scoured, with only bare soil and clumps of dirt remaining. A nearby manhole cover was removed, and multiple vehicles were mangled beyond recognition. One infamous area of destruction was the area around the Warren Theater, with the theater itself spared from a direct hit, but still sustained considerable damage to its exterior walls. But around it, it was pure carnage, with a bowling alley being completely leveled and a 7-Eleven completely flattened, with 4 people killed inside, tragically including a 3-month-old infant. The tornado then briefly weakened to EF3 intensity and caused considerable damage to several businesses near Interstate 35 and US Route 77, before crossing the interstate and mangling several vehicles in the process. The tornado regained EF4 intensity on the other side of the interstate and tore through several more neighborhoods as the debris ball was now over 2 miles wide. Another field between 2 subdivisions was scoured to bare soil, with 1 brick home in Hunters Glen Court sustaining EF5 damage, with only the slab foundation anchor bolts remaining. The most disturbing part of this was just how little amounts of debris or house contents was recovered from the residents, and the small number of debris that remained was lofted well away from the site. Just to put that in perspective, There was so much damage caused by this tornado that very little debris from homes that were swept away were ever recovered, as they would either be scattered miles away from their origin point in all directions or piled up with so much debris that it would be impossible to determine where it originated from. 2 vehicles were also lofted from the residence, one of which was thrown over 100 yards as the tornado continued through Moore's eastern neighborhoods. The tornado then approached Highland East Junior High School, where the main building was spared, but the gymnasium building was completely decimated, and a set of lockers from the structure was lofted and thrown a considerable distance into a nearby neighborhood. The Moore Public Schools Administration Building, located a few blocks to the east, received a direct hit and was completely destroyed. The tornado began to narrow but was still causing a continuous swath of EF4 damage to numerous homes as it moved through subdivision after subdivision. One final area of EF5 damage occurred when a well-built, anchor-bolted home at the corner of Heatherwood Drive and Southeast 5th Street was reduced to a bare slab. A large, well-bolted down home off Southeastern 4th Street was also swept cleanly away at EF5 intensity, with debris scattered well away from the site. Further east, the tornado would weaken to EF3 intensity as it exited Moore, destroying 6 industrial buildings and damaging 2 others. One final small area of EF4 damage was noted nearby, as 2 homes and a concrete building were leveled. The tornado would then begin to rapidly narrow and weaken, becoming a classic rope shape as it occluded, causing EF2 damage to a farm just east of Moore, where the house lost its roof and an outbuilding was destroyed. A pickup truck on the property slid 200 feet away from the farm into a field, while, interestingly enough, remaining upright. Finally, at 3:35 p.m., nearly 40 minutes of complete chaos and destruction later, the tornado finally dissipated 1/3 of a mile east of the Air Depot Boulevard, leaving behind a community in shambles. Once again, the tornado lasted 39 minutes and covered around 13 miles, but those 13 miles were in a community that was unfortunately all too familiar with violent tornadoes. Even so, this still left a mark that is still present to this day, if you look close enough. In total, 24 people were killed by the tornado directly, with 2 indirect deaths due to injuries sustained by the storm, and 212 people were injured. The tornado damage was over $2 billion, making this the costliest tornado since the Joplin tornado in 2011. Entire subdivisions were completely annihilated, and many witnesses described the tornado as, quote, a giant wall of destruction, rather than just a twister. The entire city of Moore was affected by the tornado one way or another, with the hardest hit areas surrounding the Briarwood Elementary School and Plaza Towers Elementary School. Both areas saw complete devastation as the tornado tore through and left behind nothing that could be recognized, as if a bomb went off in the area. In terms of that, many meteorologists estimated that the energy that the Moore tornado generated was equivalent to between 8 and 600 times the atomic bomb dropped in Hiroshima in World War II. Emergency crews were quick to respond, as there were hundreds of people dead or injured in or around Moore. Over 100 people had to be rescued from debris from houses that landed on top of them, having sustained varying levels of injuries. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin would declare a state of emergency within hours of the tornado striking Moore, and FEMA deployed search and rescue teams to assist emergency responders. President Barack Obama would get involved on May 21st by declaring Moore and southern Oklahoma City a federal disaster area, ordering federal agencies to assist in the recovery efforts and providing funding to assist the rebuilding process. As a direct result of this tornado, the Moore City Council in May 2014 would approve the highest building code standards in the country outside of Florida and other hurricane-prone areas. These building codes required new house construction in the city to include hurricane clips or framing anchors, continuous plywood bracing, and wind-resistant garage doors in order for homes to withstand winds up to 135 miles per hour, which is equivalent to an EF2 tornado. With that passing, Moore became the first city in the United States to adopt a building code addressing the effects of tornadoes on homes, and was praised across the country for setting the standard building codes for tornado-resistant homes for the future. But the unfortunate reality is that no home is tornado-resistant, and the best thing we can do is seek shelter underground or in an interior room when a tornado siren goes off. Speaking of underground shelters, many lives were undoubtedly saved due to the over 11,000 storm shelters built in the OKC metro area, as people were able to heed the warning and take immediate action, possibly saving hundreds of lives from the tragic fate in America's final EF5 tornado. I hope you enjoyed this documentary. This was actually a remastered version of the documentary I made 2 years ago, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out compared to the last one. This is also a case where I really enjoyed revisiting, as so many life lessons from this tornado, as well as tornado safety and recovery efforts, are highlighted in this event. And considering that this was the last EF5 tornado so far, it has gained that much more infamy. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and if you want more documentaries like these. It really helps me out and allows me to produce more. Stay safe, everybody.